Something happened last week that got a whole lot of people in the privacy and tech community really mad. I want to explain what that was, give you some of my thoughts, but most importantly, I want to share with you the one mistake that I'm noticing a lot of people are making with their email security that this whole ordeal has brought to light. Now, if you've never heard of Skiff before, they are a privacy-focused open source email platform that was started in 2020, it was publicly launched in 2021, and most recently, it was acquired by Notion in 2024. Now, the reason that so many people are mad about this Notion acquisition, I don't think it has as much to do with the fact that it was a VC-backed company that was then sold off like so many other VC companies are, even though that has something to do with it. I think it's more about the fact that we're dealing with email, which for many of us is a central form of not just communication, but identity. It's how we log into all of these different accounts that we create online. So when you take that away and it's so much harder to migrate our email, that is why people are frustrated. So let me back up for just a moment. If you were a Skiff customer, you now have 6 months to migrate all of your email away from Skiff now that they've been acquired by Notion. None of the accounts that were with Skiff are going to be migrated automatically into Notion. So whatever Notion decides to do with this technology, your account is not going to automatically be created for that. So now you have the responsibility over the next 6 months to move everything away from Skiff. Now, here's some of my thoughts. You see, I've had a couple of conversations over the past year with Andrew Milch, who's the CEO of Skiff. I believe he's now going to be working with Notion. I'm not entirely sure about that. But here's the thing. He's a great guy. He is super smart and incredibly talented. And I have zero doubt that he did everything in his power to try to make Skiff work as a standalone company. I also know from running my own business how incredibly difficult that is, especially if you've got VC-backed funding, and I don't have that. So that's an additional pressure on top to make things work at a much shorter time frame. Now, does that mean that I'm happy that they sold to Notion, that they're shutting down all of their services and forcing users to migrate away in 6 months? Absolutely not. And I empathize with any of you that are having to go through this right now. But we also don't yet know what was happening behind the scenes. What was the health of the company, the financials? What was the offer given by Notion? And frankly, we may never know, but I'm trying to reserve judgment because we don't know all of these things, and this is a big part of the equation as to why Skiff was sold to Notion. I think there are two things that we can learn from this, though, one being a mistake that many of us have made. The first is this: no matter what privacy and security services you're using, and no matter how long they've been active, there's always a risk that they will go out of business, that they will be acquired, or that something else will happen that will render those services ineffective. Yes, that is super frustrating, but it's also a reality that we all have to deal with, and you need to be able to understand when you're going in and using one of these services, what does it look like if that service were to go away? And this is especially true for email, which leads me to my second point about the mistake I've been seeing a lot of people make with their email. Whether you're using Gmail or Outlook or Yahoo or even privacy alternatives like Proton Mail or Tutanota, when you use an email as an identity to create all of these accounts online, if you use the native email address for each of these companies, you are trusting that they are going to be around for the long haul. Now, that might be a good bet for companies like Microsoft and Google, but what about all these other companies? I've personally visited the Proton offices in Switzerland and seen the hundreds of people that work diligently to create an amazing security product that they have. And I've talked with Andy Yen, their CEO, who's said time and again that they have no plans to sell. That's not how the company was set up. However, the mistake I see people make is that they are relying on these company URLs to build their entire online identity. Users who adopted an @skiff.com email address for their online identity are going to find it so much harder to migrate away, because now it's more than just migrating. Now they have to go into all of these accounts and change the email, and sometimes that's really, really hard to do. The alternative that I recommend is having a custom URL for your email. I use @allthingssecured for this company. I have a personal custom URL that I use, and I set that up with Proton Mail so that even though I'm using Proton Mail's inbox, the email address is one that I own. And if I needed to, I could easily migrate that away elsewhere to some other email provider. If I rely on @ProtonMail or @Skiff or even at Gmail. I am relying too much on those companies as opposed to owning the email address that people are using to send and receive communications to me. At the end of the day, here are my 3 recommendations. First, if you are a current Skiff user, I suggest you head on to something like Proton Mail. They've been around for over 10 years. They've produced great products. I trust them, and I've been and visited their offices. They have a great team that is producing an excellent product. Second, consider buying a custom URL. It's really not that expensive, an average of about $15 a year, and every single one of these email providers will allow you to set up that custom domain as your primary email address. So whether that's Google with Gmail, Outlook, or even Proton Mail, you can set up your own custom domain and have all of those emails come into that inbox while still using the company domain as well. And finally, number 3, recognize that most things having to do with privacy and security are a process. I don't think that once you set up this custom domain for your email that you need to go through and change everything, go back through all of your accounts. It just means that from now on, you have an email address that you own that you can take with you wherever you want to go. You can still use a throwaway Gmail account or an email alias or even the native Proton Mail email that they give you. But now you have a choice and you have one that you own. And I think that's really important when we consider the security of our email and what it would take to move away if something like Skiff were to happen to anybody else. I hope that makes sense. I don't normally do these kind of unscripted videos, so you can let me know what you think in the comments below. And if you do like these kind of videos that help you think through your security and privacy strategy, make sure you subscribe to All Things Secured because I've got a lot more of this stuff coming up.